and welcome back to another installment of our How It Works series. In this episode, we are talking about slimes. Yes, we are currently on my Let's Play server, and we have our witch farm right here, and our efficiency is being hindered by the number of slime entities we have floating around the perimeter here. I started leveling this out so it was a one deep area of just water to prevent any kind of spawning, but you notice we got some slimes just kind of right out in the middle of it here. And that got me to thinking, well, what exactly is allowing these slimes to end up out here? I thought they weren't able to spawn in one deep water. So let's go ahead and dig in and figure out exactly what allows these to spawn, what parameters they have, and we'll even get into some code and verify our findings. Alright, here we are in our test world. This is a ground that is built up about 60 blocks above bedrock, so the base level there where the water is about Y62. We're up at about 127, which isn't quite as high as we were in our actual Let's Play world, but it's high enough. As you see, we have no slimes spawning at all. We have it on hard, no slimes. And I actually sat here overnight, no slimes spawned at all. Nothing actually spawned. So this is a good way to make a nice perimeter around like a witch farm. You don't have to half slab it. You just have to clear it out and have it covered with water. So how did those slimes get out in the middle of our water in the first place? Here we're looking at the code that handles how slimes are spawned, and I have it blurred out due to copyright reasons. We have a first check here, which checks for a super flat world, and it reduces spawning to just 1 in 4 compared to a normal world before the usual spawning rules are even taken into account. The part that is actually concerning us is this section here. And it does a check to make sure that we are not in a peaceful world. And then it goes ahead and has two conditions here. The usual for Swampland and also a check for slime chunks. So for Swampland, we have to be spawning the chunk between Y50 and Y70. And that's not inclusive. So 51 through 69 are the chunks or blocks that it can spawn in. And it has a 50-50 chance of succeeding. And it also checks for the current moon phase factor. So as the moon is closer to a full moon, then it has a higher likelihood of spawning a slime. Right down to where a new moon has a 0% chance of spawning a slime. It also checks the light value at the block that we are trying to spawn at, and that is a random number between 1 and 8. So the lower the light level, the higher chance it has to spawn. And if it's higher than 8, including 8, then it will not have a chance to spawn at all. Now the other condition is for slime chunks, where it has a 1 in 10 chance of spawning as long as we're spawning below Y40. Now the other check that it does for each of these two conditions is whether the block that it is spawning on is a full block. And it also checks to make sure that it is empty, so we're not spawning inside of a block or a post, that kind of stuff. And it also checks to make sure that it is not a liquid, so that's water and lava. For mods, if the mod adds a new type of liquid, this will also catch that type of liquid and not spawn in that type of liquid either. Now that we know how slimes spawn in slime chunks, we can actually design some good slime farms. But what about those slimes that were out in the middle of our water? Let's go ahead and look at a time lapse and see how that happened. So you can see that the slimes are spawning in the darker regions on the land around our witch farm and then moving out into the water. Apparently the movement restrictions for entities that are far away from the player do not apply to the slimes. So you can see them just drifting through the water and sometimes dying in the areas where they drown. Other times they'll actually just sit there. So that's how our slimes ended up in the middle of the water. So I'm going to have to increase my perimeter, and I won't have to worry so much about laying down the half slabs. And that concludes our research into slimes and how they spawn. If you have ideas for future episodes of how it works, go ahead and leave your ideas in the comments below. If you have liked this episode, go ahead and hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe so that you can get notifications on future installments of how it works. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.